do all these things. But if you look more subtly at the actual mechanism involved in that, it's the arising of a mysterious energy that you actually have no control or volitional control over. It's not something you're doing. It's something that is doing you. In other words, the functionality that you have, you didn't create it. It just shows up with your being, with what you are. The intelligence you have, you didn't sit there in the morning and say, "Let me crank up some intelligence here." It's like, poof, there it is. It's just like God given.
Right.
And the function, the capability that you have, the amount of clarity or lack of clarity that you have, it's all spontaneously arising. And if you see that fact, that's noticing you're functioning on a more subtle level of accuracy than the level of, oh, I'm at my peak performance here, I'm really toeing the line, I'm really being responsible. It's not untrue to say that, but that's a more superficial and slightly more inaccurate
and harder
version of the same thing. And so what I'm suggesting is it's possible to go to an ever more subtle and correspondingly ever more accurate understanding of what actually happens in real time as we go about our lives, as we live, as this keeps happening. And that process is what I'm talking about, of just coming to see what this actually is, how it actually is, with more clarity, with more subtlety, with more accuracy. Simply because the superficial interpretations, as they're not untrue, they're just shallow, they're naive, they don't really capture it as it is. And as such, they block us off from the astounding fullness that actually obtains, that things actually are.
I was watching a surfing documentary the other night, and blah blah blah. It was exquisitely photographed, and it was really, they did such a good job with it that you really, after watching these, the waves, which to me is a lot like what you were describing earlier, the being, nobody's doing anything, it's just there, and it keeps happening. And I'm watching these guys, and of course they're chasing them all over the world, and they were showing surf cultures all over the world, and they end it with this place where people have been waiting literally for a lifetime. They've been monitoring waves and taking all their measurements and everything, and it's 100 miles out to sea, away from shore. And there's these 60 to, I think they said 60-foot waves, which is an enormous size wave. And they just, they show these guys surfing it all day long, and they have this film. And at the end of watching that, which is the end of this movie, you really have it's the same experience. It was like you were totally, there was no doing it, because I wasn't surfing. I mean, I was only watching it, but I had totally that experience with those people. I mean, that's how good they did the movie, in my personal opinion. When you were describing earlier about just being, that it arises and then it goes, it arises and then it goes, it's a lot like a wave. And my mind was drawn to that experience because it was one of the most pure, I wasn't even doing anything except watching TV, and it was one of the most pure examples I've ever felt of, wow.
Sure.
Pure ecstasy.
But you don't need to find analogies, because this right here is that.
Right, I'm not quite there yet. Sometimes, but...
Well, you are, actually. This is what there is.
Well, yes, you're right. I'm here, but I don't interpret it the same way always.
Right.
Yeah. Is that what our life is? We're surfing on a 100-mile limit.
Yeah.
It seems that I think what I'm hearing you say is that like self-responsibility and self-care, which seem like smart strategies or good values on a relative level, is really just luck or grace. If you happen to be conditioned in ways of seeing that's valuable and it does seem to work, it's a skillful way to live, it seems. It's almost just pure luck or grace or something if you happen to be going in that direction.
Yeah.
And if you're not, there's no blame, it's just ignorance or
sure.
not luck.
Yeah, I mean, look at someone that
Or it
isn't.
is luck. It's
Look
luck
at,
to be causing misery.
yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly so.
I mean, it's all luck or grace or whatever you want to
Yeah,
call it.
luck, grace, karma, will of God.
Will of God.
I mean, there's all
Whatever
these,
word you call
there's
it.
all these words which don't capture the reality,
Right.
which is the fact that this is actually happening the way it's happening. And if we look more and more subtly at how it's happening, and let go of our simplistic interpretations and explanations, we'll be able to see it more and more accurately, more and more deeply and truly as it actually is, and see that we are this, and see that there's a fundamental, an absolutely fundamental inherent okayness
Or
about
awesomeness.
it. And awesomeness,
It's kind of
beauty, intelligence, all of that.
You feel good that you're doing a good job, doing the right steps to get where you seem to be going, which seems good. And so you sort of feel, wow, I'm really doing it well, and you're right. But it is all conditioning, in a way, all conditions that you've been exposed to, opinions or views or guidance, and it's all luck.
Right.
It really, even though you're doing a great job and you think you're doing a good job and you're making good choices, it seems like it is just good fortune or luck.
Certainly.
It's out of your hands, even though you look like you're making all the decisions.
What's the difference between luck and superstition then? I mean, are those the same? We just talked about this. Two versions of the same thing. Curious.
Well, both of them are fictions. So, and whether they're the same fiction or not is debatable, but they're both fiction. They're both interpretations. I mean, superstition is a way of interpreting things, whereas luck is a way of describing the way things happen. Luck is saying lack of personal control, and you know that random circumstances perhaps are bring about the effect of other circumstances. And superstition might be that there's mysterious ways of trying to manipulate or control things. So they might not be equivalent as ideas, but they're both equivalent in that they are ideas, and neither of them is true. Mm-hmm. Because the nature of reality is such that no idea can capture it accurately. No idea. So any idea is wrong. Not because it's not true as far as it goes, but because it's incomplete, hence inaccurate, hence wrong.
So you're left silent.
Yes.
You can't really, we're talking just for the fun of it. It's not like there's anything to say.
In one sense, and yet there's nothing wrong with talking, because talking is a vehicle of intelligence too. Everything is a vehicle of intelligence.
Could you substitute accident from the word luck?
Mm-hmm. But again, don't try to pin it down verbally saying it's this or that, because if you're trying to understand it verbally or conceptually, you're shutting yourself off from the reality. Just look at why is everything that's happening right here in your experience happening exactly the way it is. Why do you have that particular glass case in that particular pocket of that particular t-shirt being hit exactly at that particular angle of the light, with your hair arrayed in exactly that particular array at the moment, with exactly that expression on your face right this instant? Why? You can't say, and yet here it is. You know, so the naked fact is constantly revealing itself. Now we can see that as a fact, and then we stop trying to collapse it down to an interpretation. Otherwise, we're just in our heads wrestling with, well, is it luck or is it, karma, or is it, all of which is just going off into dreamland. It's going off into imagination, which is fine, but it has nothing to do directly with the actual functioning of whatever this is, except that the actual functioning of whatever this is doing that, going off into imagination too.
Earlier I asked a question about what might give rise to this quality of certainty that I call out the search. You suggested that it was familiarity with seeing that over and over again that my various stories about things are just not the case. Mm-hmm. There's this openness. that comes when you see that. And it happens in different circumstances, and after a while you're just like, oh, you just kind of get it. But I'm going to make some assumptions here, so some of them might be off. But my experience has been that there is a particular story, which when I see through that story, there is a kind of like, I feel like I've gotten to the root of something. And that's the sense that there's some kind of center to my experience, and it's me. When I see through that particular, and it needs to be defended and protected,
Right.
and it's important.
Right.
So that particular story is, and that is that story bleeds into all the other stories.
Okay.
You follow? So in that particular, when I see that particular, there's an openness there at that center. There is a kind of like, see, I don't need to. It affects all the other ones often.
Okay. Sure.
So, okay. And you're suggesting this sort of this perceptual approach to it. It's just kind of like, look at it. Is there anything there or not?
Sure.
Okay. And it opens up sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, what I also noticed though is that there's an additional quality to my experience, and I brought this up before, and that is there's like this energetic quality, but not like this raw energy that you talk about. It's like this quality of again that feeling of having to protect the self. Even now, there's a subtle sense of nervousness and evaluation going on.
Sure.
And I really don't like that. Okay? And my experience has been that just having that experience, there's like this congealing. There's like a sense of self for me comes out of just that.
Okay.
Just that stuff alone creates this feeling of like I got to defend something here.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like something's at stake.
Okay.
You know, even independent of having a story. Do you follow me? So to me, they're almost like two different areas, and they both can create this this feeling like, oh, there's something at stake.
Right.
Does that make sense? So what I noticed was that even when I was sitting here and just this feeling of openness, I noticed that a sense of what's the word? Those qualities of like, oh, this is good, this is bad. I need this, I don't need that. Protecting myself against this, even independently of having a story about it, those energies just arise sometimes.
Right.
And they create a sense of, oh, I gotta protect, blah 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 blah.
Right.
So how do you work with those energies? Like for example, nervousness. Anything sort of like these emotional qualities that are sort of just that the nervous system just spits out.
I understand. Yeah. Well, always you look at the context, volley back. You know, because these systems, these dynamic experiential systems of emotionality and all that don't exist in a vacuum. They don't exist in a void. They exist in a context. What is the context they exist in? What else is going on?
At the same time.
Yeah. I mean, there's experiencing going on. You know, there is perceiving. I mean, these things are, these emotions are existing in you and you're caught up in them, but you're also experiencing them. If you weren't experiencing them, you know, if I talked your head off and you weren't experiencing anything, you wouldn't be experiencing these emotions because the experiencing aspect facility would have been shut off. So, in other words, there's a context of, there's more going on than just this simple fact of what's in the center of the frame of this whole mechanism, right? This mechanism exists in a context. What is that context? It exists in a context of awareness. It exists in a context of being. It exists in a context of the spontaneous apparition of miraculous energy. It exists in a context, in other words, there's a machinery, there's a functioning of an apparatus that results in the symptom of that experience. And if you can dolly back and see the whole machinery, see the whole apparatus, all of a sudden you're not just caught up in the surface of the experience as it's presenting itself, but you're seeing behind the scenes. It's like the Wizard of Oz, you know, it's like, don't look behind the curtain, you know, ignore the man behind the curtain. When you see the man behind the curtain, all of a sudden you get a context of, well, yeah, sure, there's this big face bellowing with all the noise and all that, but there's some machinery that's involved in producing it, and it has a different aspect than it may seem to have on the surface. So more specifically, you know, you said there's this mechanism happens. There's also a space you can experience. Can you experience those two simultaneously? The spaciousness, the openness, and then this mechanism. Does that happen? Or are they either or?
It kind of has to, otherwise everything would freeze up. You can only have one experience at a time.
Okay.
And there wouldn't be any movement. So yeah, there's always some kind of space.
Okay. Yeah, there's always a space that it's happening in. So you can draw your attention to the space. It's like if you're watching a stage performance, say you're watching a ballet or something, you know, you can be zoomed in on the dance